right, everybody. Let me just get my screen ready. Hold on just a moment. It's not. Okay, there we go. All right, well, thank you for attending this presentation about moving stories. In this session, we'll explore the connection between the body and the brain for learning and how to supercharge movement and learning through storytelling in its myriad incarnations. Who am I? My name is Zach Smith. I've worked in early childhood education internationally since 2005, now at the Cow School in Western Saudi Arabia. I'm a PE teacher who fervently believes that teachers in an early childhood setting should be transdisciplinary in their approach. I'm intensely invested in merging literacy and movement to maximize learning. And here's why. I think this proverb illustrates why we should incorporate moving stories into our teaching. So this quote portrays the power that stories possess to reach and teach. Adding movement to the equation enhances learning and builds student ownership, engagement, and physical skills. Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. Let's have a look at our objectives for today. Today, we will explore why we should merge movement and literacy concepts. Next, I will demonstrate how literature can be used as a pedagogical frame for encouraging children to move with purpose. And after that, hopefully, we'll be able to field any questions you might have. So, without further ado, let's dive into the question, why should we create moving stories with learners? By first examining what a moving story looks like. So what do we mean by moving stories? We're not just talking about a powerful tale. For our purposes, movement plus literature equals moving stories. Moving stories can be adapted from children's literature or created for and or with children. They are tales that teachers and students animate together through active, collaborative, dramatic play. Let me show you just a bit about what I mean. This is a short video of a moving story performed by a group of our youngest learners in PE class. Here's what you should look out for. Look for the type of energy that exists in this learning engagement. See if you can spot students making choices in their movements. Maybe can you discern the fundamental movement skills being developed? Look for conceptual learning taking place and try to perceive crucial elements of emergent literacy being explored. Here we go.
There once was a giant named Jerry who was proud of how much he could carry. When he made himself large, he was big as a barge. And to Andy the ant, he was... Can we be large, scary giants? Come on, everybody, be a large, scary giant. Be Jerry. Come on, Jerry's. Large, 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 large. Out and over things. He was small and could fit into all. Jerry the giant called him. Make yourself small. Like Andy the ant. Let's go with things small, like Andy the ant. Standing up when you're standing, so you're losing. small. But Jerry is trapped in it all.
Okay, so in that video, which wasn't perfect, maybe it even looked a bit messy, but play-based learning often looks like that, doesn't it? However, it's important that teachers guide students through developmentally appropriate transdisciplinary approaches. This learning occurred in PE class, but it could have occurred in your homeroom classroom setting just as easily. Moving stories can occur anywhere, and that's what we're going to explore again today. I just need to fix this because the video sometimes messes it up. Moving right on. So what makes the physical aspect to moving stories crucial? Researchers and theorists agree that physical skills are a vital foundation for learning. These skills are developed during the early years and define the blueprint for all further learning. Learners need honed sensory skills to perceive all types of input coming from without. Learners also need vestibular skills to balance themselves physically while moving and staying still in different environments. Spatial and body awareness allow learners to orient and organize themselves in the world. Physical aptitude contributes to stamina that allows learners to persevere through challenges. Coordination and control, finally, enable them to manipulate objects effectively for experimentation and creation. All of these benefits are elucidated in the book, A Moving Child is a Learning Child by Jill Connell, one of my favorites, reminding us how important it is to hone these physical skills in early childhood through play. As we know, these days, playtime is often diminished due to the seductive draw of technology and other factors. Storytelling is an effective way to re-engage young learners in the physical play that is vital to their future health and success. Another reason for moving stories. How do young learners merge physical skills with cognition? Early childhood learners function best in an environment where big, conceptual ideas are explored rather than topical fact-based trivia. Young learners need to understand the concept of change more than they need to know that leaves turn red in autumn. Conceptual learning emphasizes timeless, universal, and abstract ideas. Change happens everywhere, all the time, but leaves turning red is a phenomenon specific to particular times and places. So with conceptual understanding, learners can use the skills and knowledge they naturally accrue to make connections between seemingly disparate topics. Concept-based learning expert Lynn Erickson calls this practice synergistic thinking and identifies it as a vital 21st century skill. It is also the optimal early childhood learning zone. Now, how do moving stories combine both conceptual learning and fundamental movement skills? Well, storytelling promotes synergistic thinking by providing learners with a familiar yet limitless medium to formulate and display their learning. Accessing kinesthetic learning through dramatic performances grounds storytelling and conceptual learning in the physical realm and makes the synergistic thinking authentic, visible, fun, and most importantly, active. Now, before we move on, I want to provide you with an opportunity to reflect on how our knowledge so far aligns with your current situation. Let's engage the connect, extend, challenge thinking routine. So this is the time for you to do some reflection. In the chat, decide how the information you have received connects to what you already know about how young students learn. How does it connect for you? Also, how does it extend your current mode of thinking? How does it go beyond what you think already? And finally, how does it challenge or puzzle you? What questions might you have at this point? What do you find challenging? You can share your answers in the chat. We'll just take a moment for reflection. Okay, so I hope you had a chance for some reflection. At this point, we're going to move on so we can stay on time. So moving on in our Moving Stories adventure. In the comic pictured here from Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples' space epic Saga, a character explains how stories speak to children and adults alike. Please take a moment to absorb. So why moving stories? Students are often told to sit still and listen to stories. The thinking is that proper attention can't be paid to important ideas without complete calm. And there's definitely a place for quiet story time. We're not doing away with that. However, as you have seen, stories can be dynamic too. They can roll and run. They can lead us in active quest for knowledge. Movement will get learning going on a deeper level if teachers activate it. That is why we are here today, to venture into the realm of moving stories. Let's go. So now we're going to talk about how to implement moving stories for learning. As we have seen, stories call learners to action. But what are some possibilities for exploring concepts and developing fundamental movement skills through moving stories? Let's explore these different possibilities and what we need to consider when planning. There are several ways we can approach moving stories in the classroom and elsewhere. Teachers can generate their own narratives for use in the learning space. We can leverage high-quality anchor text and our environment to create conceptual play worlds. We can also facilitate student creation of their own moving stories. Now, these are by no means all of the possibilities that exist for using storytelling and movement-based teaching, that's for sure. Now, everybody's context is different, so I invite you to soak up this information and think about what pieces might apply to your situation. One approach to the moving story model is to create a series of teacher-generated texts to inspire and guide students' conceptual learning. Now, some things to keep in mind when generating your own moving stories. Keep your concepts central to the story when creating. You're going to hear that a lot. Identify the concept. Let this be your beacon when writing, leading you on. Next, use visuals to go along with your story. If you're not a great artist, utilize clip art or animated GIFs to illustrate your stories. This is a crucial factor for keeping young children engaged. They need the language, but they crave the pictures. Combining vibrant language with vivid images creates an enriching formula. Also, it's okay to keep the stories brief. A few lines will suffice if they contain engaging material, as we'll see in just a moment. Finally, it will be more fun for you and your students if you vary the styles you present. Poetry, narratives, call and response, songs, repetitive texts, and other styles can happily coexist. And don't be afraid to crib from mythology, pop culture, or whatever you feel will resonate with your learners. A successful unit I have taught using teacher-generated moving stories is entitled The Magic Soup Pot. The conceptual lens in this unit is creative movement or expression. We explore all of the elements that help us express ourselves through movement. We utilize stone soup as our inciting tale, defining the idea of everyone bringing something to create a significant shared experience. And this story brings in the soup pot as a symbolic gathering place for us to deposit ideas, concepts, and stories, which you can see pictured here. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Every story that we perform in the unit represents a creative movement concept, and every story has a title page, and each title page goes into the symbolic soup pot to mix with the others. This vital documentation leaves traces that help children remember what we have done and recognize how the ingredients work together to create a delicious mélange. Now, I do act as a narrator to the stories we perform most of the time, but always I also join in as a performer to model the movement concepts I want the students to explore. As you can see in this picture here, we might be Jerry Giants again. We're being very large, extending our bodies as far as we can and exploring spatial awareness and body awareness. So as we watch an example of a moving story created and performed during this unit, what do you notice? Again, do you recognize the movement concept being explored? I'll give you a hint. We're taking on the roles of statues and visitors to a statue garden to explore movement versus stillness. And can you notice the use of text and visuals in conjunction with the student performances? Also, do you recognize any familiar melodies incorporated? Let's see.
Statue stay still in the garden. The statue stay still in the garden. The statue stay still in the garden. Waiting for children to come. Hey, children, stand up. This is the statue garden. The children arrive in the garden. The children arrive in the garden. The children go quietly. Wow, give them a clap.
Okay, so that was the children in the statue garden, another moving story. You probably noticed that the story was very quick. This allows us to perform it several times with students taking on different roles. So we would go through this multiple times. Students would have a chance to be a statue and also to be a visitor to the statue garden. And not only does it fit very well into this very short presentation, it's an example of how quick and simple a moving story can be. So another approach to moving stories is use of an anchor text. This is a story we will come back to repeatedly in order to explore our concept. When using anchor texts as moving stories, there are a few things to consider. First, again, identify the concepts we want students to explore. What are the big ideas that we want to unpack? And are they timeless, universal, and abstract, or are they fact-based topics? We want concepts, not topics. Now, next, we need to establish that the chosen text, when we're choosing it, can support repeated use, as we'll be coming back to it again and again. And finally, we need to decide how we will leverage our environment to support the exploration of the text and its concepts. So also, what roles will we take on? The teacher should always take on a role within the story. They need to be a part of the learning, not outside of it. So one way to leverage our environment to turn an anchor text into a moving story is to devise a conceptual play world. And these are two examples of conceptual play worlds we made at my school during the 2021-22 school year. Conceptual play worlds allowed my students to kinesthetically explore the concepts of sequence and direction. We carefully chose one anchor text for each semester: Rosie's Walk by Pat Hutchins and We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen and Helen Oxenbury. So conceptual play worlds devised by Monash University's Marilyn Fleer are imaginary scenarios created by educators where learners are invited to go on imaginary journeys, meet and solve challenges, and learn concepts, all while playing. In our play worlds, with teacher narration, guidance, and collaboration, the students interacted with the prepared environment, progressing through the stories physically and mentally over a series of play-based journeys. You can see them here. One child in the windmill pulling up grain, which is actually a bucket filled with bean bags tied to a hanging bar there. So as you can see, we took a comprehensive approach to environmental design for each story so that our conceptual play world spaces became the story's physical manifestations, a story ground where students could actively explore every event in the narrative sequences, step by step. Now we're going to use another video to go inside the play world. Here you can see kindergarten students leading their own physical and narrative explorations. Normally I would join the play with these students, but I was acting as the videographer this time, and I might do a little bit of narration as well. So the students are going from the house on a bear hunt through the long wavy grass, the deep cold river, the thick oozy mud, and through the deep dark forest. Again, this would be a swirling, whirling snowstorm. There's paper in there that should come down, but they forgot. And now the bear has found me, and they go in reverse. We notice we have multiple bears there, and the bears are playing their part. You can have multiple people playing the same role, so you can have everybody involved in the story. Now they're back in the house. You might not have heard the child at the end there say, "We're not going on a bear hunt again," but they did. They went on bear hunts many, many times. That's the great thing about conceptual play worlds, and anchor texts as well. We repeat them over and over again, so the children learn movement concepts very well while they're playing. So you can feel the students' exuberance in this learning engagement. You can watch them making choices in their actions, which makes the activity meaningful for them. Also, you can witness their knowledge of the text, narrative sequence, and character motivations. And at the same time, the students actively discovered the concept of direction. They applied that knowledge through their performance while also developing fundamental movement skills. And all this was made possible through play and anchor text as moving stories in conceptual play worlds. So we're going on to another concept here, another possibility for moving stories. These are student-generated moving stories. When generating original stories for use in a movement-based unit, can you guess? That's right, we must start by identifying the concept we wish to explore with the students. So this will provide us with a framework from which we can proceed to brainstorm ideas. And when brainstorming ideas, especially with young children, it's helpful to utilize a graphic organizer to structure our ideas. Before and during the creation process, the teacher should decide on his or her level of involvement. Perhaps the teacher will act as a facilitator for the student authors. And when it is time, a publishing or sharing session is advisable. This serves as a celebration of the students' efforts and encourages them to return for more. So as my students and I navigated this publishing process in PE class to explore and illustrate more moving concepts, we learned and practiced various fundamental movement skills We likened them to animals and other things in the world and made up stories that could be performed to demonstrate our learning. I served as the facilitator of their stories. I introduced and maintained graphic organizers, guided their brainstorming sessions, and helped them finalize their ideas. Now, due to time constraints, I chose to help the students publish their stories using Book Creator. That was my role. I created a library in which they could access their published texts outside of PE class, along with those from other classes, and they really enjoyed coming back to them and discovering everybody else's. And if you scan the code on this slide, you can access the library of books we created. Also, in the appendix of this presentation, I've compiled a list of other publishing options and included a graphic organizer template. And you will be able to access this presentation in a view setting. At the end, there'll be another QR code. This one takes you to the Book Creator library. Next, it was time to perform our stories, to turn them into moving stories. Let's have a look.
So this is the story of The Bunny and the Ball, and it's a story inspired about body shapes inspired by Miss Anna's class. Here are our characters. We have Spoogly the bunny. We have the round balls. We have the wide storm.
That's our teaching assistant.
And we have the twisted snakes. Okay, so each person is going to play their part. And here we go. Spoogly was a very playful and curious bunny. Spoogly loved to hop around and see what there was to see. See, there go our Spooglies. Next page. One day, Spoogly saw a very round ball.
There go the balls rolling.
Bunny, Spoogly decided to follow it.
Spoogly follows the balls.
The ball bounced past a narrow tree.
There goes our narrow giraffe.
And Spoogly hopped after it. The round ball bounced toward a twisted snake.
There's our twisted snake.
Bounced after it. Careful to avoid the snake.
Here's our wide storm.
The giraffe's tall and narrow. The snake's twisted body got wet. And of course, Spoogly got wet too. It was time to go back home. But the round ball bounced on. The end.
All right, so as you can see, again, from this example, their stories were magical and insightful tales that illustrated their burgeoning understanding of fundamental movement concepts and ignited their agency in exploring these concepts physically. This was a fulfilling process for all involved because we started out at a level where it seemed creating coherent narratives might not be possible. But we learned together. The students' grasps on the concepts became fuller, their movement skills developed, and their truly original ideas helped us get to a point where we could perform their significant creations. Even if the product begged for a little touch-up from me in a facilitation role, the process was truly meaningful and beneficial for them. So before we go, I invite you to consider your moving story experience. Please take a moment to think back upon what you have learned. What did you see that sticks with you? And what does this new or reaffirming information make you think? And what are you still wondering? And if you have a question for me, we have some time now as well. So this is another reflection time for you. We have a couple more minutes before we're through. I'm going to go on to the end page and just say thank you. as well. And as I said, there's that QR code if you want to access the presentation on Google Drive. So thanks for coming on a moving story journey with me. You can ask me anything you want. Just get in touch with me through the links on this slide, as we have very little time now. And as I said, if you would like to access a copy of this presentation, and it will include the appendix, the graphic organizer template, and publishing options, and the references that I've used to create this presentation, just scan the code. And I'd love to hear if you use any of these ideas in your classroom. So please get in touch. Let's see what we have in the chat here. I don't know how to access the chat at the same time as share. I might need to stop my share. Okay. Oh, very nice, warm feedback. Thank you to everyone for coming. And again, if you have any, do I have books that are easy to make them moving stories? Yes. Well, there's, I like Rosie's Walk quite a bit. Rosie's Walk is a great book for exploring like directional concepts over, under, through, around, across. I would check out Rosie's Walk at first. And that was inside our presentation. You might have seen it. I also like a book called Who Hops, which is great. But really, you can take any story and add movement to it if you get creative, That's the great thing about moving stories. And you read a page, you impersonate the characters, you come back, you go on to another page, right? That's the beauty of moving stories. I always tell the kids, we don't just listen to stories, we move the stories. So almost any story can be a moving story. And of course, you can create your own. So I don't know, I think if we have the admin here, I think we have to stop now. Is that correct? Because there's another session going. If we don't need to, I can certainly stay, but it is 7 o'clock my time,